Hello student, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Professor Dhananjay Bhattacharya of Saha Institute of Nuclear Physics, Kolkata. I am presently the head of Computational Science Division, but before this I was in Biophysics Division for quite long time. Now in this session of Quantum Biophysics, you have learned what is quantum mechanics, how it is useful for understanding the structure and spectroscopy of hydrogen atom or some smaller atoms, and then you have used how to calculate the potential energy of a slightly bigger molecule by Hartree-Fock or density functional theory. And then when we come to biophysics, naturally we would have to understand the structure and function of proteins or bigger macromolecules. These macromolecules contains thousands of atoms, and so we cannot actually use the quantum mechanics which was developed to understand properties of electron around a nucleus in this macromolecule. And then we discussed about potential energy, a force field obtained potential energy which approximates the atoms as single particle instead of electrons, and these atoms have some partial charges. These partial charges interact with each other. If there are solvents in between, these partial charge interaction becomes different, and then we tried to find out the best energy minimized conformation of this biomolecule. We assume that the best energy minimized conformation of the biomolecule will be the realistic structure inside the cell, acting as a functional molecule. But these energy minimized structure correspond to the structure which is local to that initial gauge structure. If I start from one structure, I will get a energy minimized structure at this point maybe. If I start another structure from here, I will get an energy minimized structure maybe here. If I start from another structure, maybe I will get a even lower energy minimized structure. Now which one is the most stable structure? Which one is the structure corresponding to the actual cellular environment? That is impossible to find out from these. Then we learned that in reality, at physiological temperature, maybe the structure stays in this region for some time, the structure may stay in this region for some time, it may stay in this region for some time, maybe it may go across the hill also for some time. And these processes are going on because of the entropy, because of the kinetic energies associated with all these atoms. And we are going to learn how to then make a statistical average of all these different conformations in whole phase space. And this method we will be learning now today is called Monte Carlo simulation, where we start from a given structure and then we can jump up over the hills and to find another structure, then jump another hill and go to another structure, and all these can go on in a physiological sense, and maybe from these we will be understanding the structure and property of the macromolecule or a macromolecule and a ligand complex together. So objective of this lecture is to develop some method. We will concentrate on Monte Carlo simulation to calculate average parameters using statistical mechanical ensemble. We will restrict ourselves to canonical ensemble in this situation to show how this method can overcome local energy barriers for searching the whole phase space, and to show its application in obtaining best orientation of a drug-like molecule near protein active site or at the protein active site. Now we have seen that a simple molecule like di-substituted ethane-like molecule has multiple energy minimas. So we need to consider all these energy conformations, not only the global energy minima. And in fact, in this situation, there are two global energy minimas and one local energy minima, which is slightly higher than the global energy minima. And then we need to consider all these positions. And so one such approach to consider all these positions and then accordingly consider their contributions in the average parameter can be grid search procedure. This situation we can consider different energies at different positions of the or different values of the torsion angles, such as 30 degree, 60 degree and 90 degree and so on. But considering the 60 degree is not sufficient, so we have to make smaller grids. If we had considered all these points, taking smaller and smaller grids, we could calculate the average parameter in canonical ensemble, considering largest contributions from these points and this point, and high contribution from this point. But we have to consider the contributions from these points as well, since the energy at this point is similar to the energy at this point. So this energy or these conformations will also contribute significantly. But we cannot neglect these contributions at the energy hills. So we have low contribution. So these low contributions will contribute, these high energy points will contribute definitely to the average property. And similarly, we have to consider also the lowest contribution from the highest energy points. So in a realistic situation, our energy landscape is even more complicated, even more rugged, and so we have to consider all these points. Now, one such method is using random numbers. So random numbers can be used for few important degrees of freedom. So if we had considered random variables, and then we can obtain, say, potential energy corresponding to this variable having a random number which has a low contribution. We can also have a random number to give rise to this conformation which have a significant contribution for average. But we may not get a random number corresponding to this lowest energy conformation. Similarly, we may not get a random number corresponding to this high energy conformation. So these random numbers may give some estimate of the average property. The other option of using random number is the following. So we can start from a random number or from a random position, such as shown in the solid blue arrow. So, and from this point, we can randomly perturb the structure using this expression, where the variable at the k plus 1th state becomes equal to kth state, the value of the variable at kth state, plus a lambda into 0.5 minus random. These random numbers are actually between 0 to 1. So if the random number is, say, 0.3, then we will have a motion where x increases. So 0.5 minus 0.3, it will be a positive quantity, 0.2, and lambda is a positive quantity. So our x will increase. That means this blue point will go to the violet point. A random number can be also large. For example, it can be 0.9. In that case, this value within parentheses will be minus 0.4. In that case, the random value of the variable will become smaller than the previous value xm. So our movement from this blue point will be towards the red point. That means by this equation, we can go forward as well as backward directions. Now, what to do with these random numbers? We can, or how to calculate these random numbers? There are several algorithms for obtaining random number. One of the simplest one I am trying to show here, where we can take a seed value, a integer value, ia, and then multiply the integer ia with a large integer. This integer is so large such that the product of IB will not be exactly calculated by a computer. The computer has fixed precision. It cannot store very large numbers. It has a limit, and this number is actually towards the limit. So if we multiply this number by any number larger than 1, then it will cross the limit. And if it crosses the limit, the result IB will be not really multiplication of IA by into by this number, but some wrong number. It can be positive or it can be negative even. If it is negative, then we add a very large positive number like this, making this IB again a positive. And then if this multiplication is still positive, in that case we can multiply by this number, this small number, to get a fraction z, which is always between 0 and 1. And then we can, in the next iteration, make IA equal to the modified IB, and then go to this operation again, whereby we get another IB, and then after this test we get another random number. We can make again IA equal to the next IB to get another random number. So we repeating these set of equations, we can obtain very many random numbers. All of them will be between 0 and 1. So using these random numbers, we can do many things, such as integration of area under the curve. One such thing I will show. But before that, let me also tell that these random numbers must follow some property. The number, as I told before, that it has to be between 0 and 1. We need a series of numbers because we have to modify the parameter many times to scan the whole phase space. The most important property is that the next number in the series should be totally unrelated to the previous one. Since in this case we have done some mistake, definitely. So this mistake is that due to computer limitation or the limitation in the value of the integer which can be stored in a computer, so this relation is not there, or this relation is not really followed in the computer. So our random numbers are not related. And the last and most important thing is that they are uniformly distributed. So as shown in these cases, we have generated 1000 random numbers, and we see that they are uniformly distributed over the space between 0 to 1 and 0 to 1000. Now if I count all the numbers which fall between 0 and 0.1 and make a bar out of that, I see this kind of situation. We can also count the numbers between 0.1 and 0.2. I get another bar. If I count 0.2 to 0.3, I get another bar. And you see, these are nearly uniformly distributed. They are not exactly uniformly distributed as we expect it to be, but that is due to considering few random numbers. If I had considered 10,000 random numbers, I would have observed more smooth curve or more smooth line at this point. If I had considered 1 million random number, it will be even more smooth. So due to smaller number of random numbers generated, these curves appear to be not very uniform, but actually they are uniform in principle. Now using this, as I told, that we can calculate or integrate different things. For example, if we can integrate the area under a circle, that can give me the value of pi. So we can calculate the value of pi by this equation, that area covered by a circle of unit radius. So where area covered by a circle we know is pi r square, and if r is 1, it gives rise to pi. Now how to calculate the area under a circle? We can randomly choose values of x and y in the range of -1 to +1. So we can actually calculate a random number, then make it 0.5 minus random, and then multiply it by 2. So in that case we will get a value up to -1, or it can be +1 also. So we take two random numbers, x and y, and then we can calculate whether root over x square plus y square is less than 1 or not. If it is less than 1, then it falls in this region within the circle. If it is larger than 1, it will fall on this region, in the blue region outside the circle. So I can make n attempts or m attempts. M is very large, and then out of these m attempts, n number of points fall within this circle. So after m attempts, we can find out the n. In each attempt, we will find out whether this number x square plus y square is less than 1, and then if it is less than 1, we increment pi by 1, before that we initialize pi to 0, and then we can count how many points fall within this circle, and then divide by, if that is n, we divide pi by n. Pi is the quantity which we incremented, and that will give rise to a value of pi. So again, if we do this iteration for 1000 times, we will get a poor estimate of pi. But if we do this iteration for 10,000 steps, we will get a better estimate of pi. If we do this operation for million, we will get even better estimate of pi. If we do this operation for a billion cases, we will get a very good estimate of pi. But obviously this estimate of pi are all approximate. We have to eventually go to infinite steps and then obtain pi. But as you know, that value of pi is even now undetermined by the largest supercomputer, because it cannot be in principle calculated. We cannot go to infinity. Infinity is such a number which is larger than any number we can think of. Using these, the other property of random number, as I told you, that it is uniformly distributed, and uniform distribution also tells that the probability of finding out a random number between 0 and 0.2 is actually 0.2, or between 0 and 0.4 is actually 0.4. So we can sum up these probabilities, and then we can say that up to 0.3 we got slightly less than 100 plus 120 or 125, and then 100. So we can add these things, and then it will come to around 0.3. So the random numbers are distributed such that the probability of getting a random number between 0 to a is actually a, where a is the fraction. We will make use of this in the later part of this lecture. So now, as I showed you earlier, that we can start from a position I, and then from I we can move either right or left because of movement by random motion. So in each case we can calculate their probabilities. The probability is like this, as discussed in the previous lecture. Probability of the position I is PE equal to exponential minus EI by KBT divided by summation of exponential E by KBT. This summation of the exponential E by KBT is partition function, and I told you that this partition function has to be evaluated by considering near infinite number of configurations, all these possible conformations. So calculation of partition function is that way a quite difficult thing, but we can use this equation probability to find out relative probability of this state and this state, or this state and this state. So we can divide probability of EI plus 1 divided by probability of EI, and this division will actually cancel out the Z part, the Z components, and we will get something like this: exponential minus EI plus 1 by KBT divided by exponential minus EI by KBT. That means it is equal to actually exponential minus EI plus 1 minus EI by KBT. Now this is actually delta E. So if my ith position has energy larger than the I plus 1th position, that means if I consider this is the I plus 1th position, in that case this EI plus 1 is smaller than EI. That means this part within this first parenthesis is negative, and that means along with this negative, this whole part within the exponential becomes positive, and you know exponential something positive is greater than 1. Exponential 0 is 1 and exponential something positive is larger than 1. That means probability of going from ith position to this position, the violet position, is always greater than 1. We cannot think really of greater than 1 probability. So we can say that it is a certainty, or that means the probability is actually 1. It will always go from a higher energy position as given by the blue arrow to a relatively lower energy position as given by the violet arrow. But what happens if it goes to the red arrow position? So if I try to go from EI to EI plus 1 given by the red arrow, in that case EI plus 1 is larger than EI. That means this part in the first parenthesis, EI plus 1 minus EI, that is positive. In that case, minus exponential minus delta E by KT is slightly smaller than 1. And if my EI plus 1 is having very high energy difference, that means if delta E is very high, then exponential minus delta E by KT will be very small. And if delta E is small, that means this position actually is very close to this blue position. In that case, my exponential minus delta E by KT will be smaller than 1, but not very small. That means it will be probably 0.9 or 0.8 or something. So the probability of transition from EI to EI plus 1 in that case will be quite significant. If delta E is very high, then probability of transition from ith to I plus 1th state will be very low. We can make use of these as shown in this situation, that if delta E is negative, that means probability is very high, higher than 1, we accept always. Now if delta E is slightly positive, that means e to the power minus delta E by KT is close to 1. That means this situation, in that case we have to either accept or reject the move. So this accept or reject the move is actually done by following this probability. So we have seen in the earlier lecture that we have a velocity distribution. Different atoms have different velocities even at room temperature. Many of the atoms have very small velocities and many of the atoms have very large velocities, but most of the atoms have an average velocity. So we can say, and similar to velocity, we have kinetic energy also. So these atoms will have very high kinetic energy, which are small in numbers. These atoms will have very low kinetic energy, which are again small in number, but these atoms will have average kinetic energy. Now, why the probability of transition, or why the transition in the previous state? That is because of the kinetic energy. So we are considering up to now only potential energy, but potential energy is not the full thing. We have to consider actually kinetic energy, and the kinetic energy will allow or disallow the transition to actually higher energy state. So we say that if delta E is very high, then also we can have a random number, or this position, this quantity exponential minus delta E by KT, such that it is larger than a random number. If this is larger than a random number, we can say that this quantity has a probability of transition. Larger than random number means that it has a probability equal to that part. So we consider that as a transition probability, and if delta E by KT is such that exponential minus delta E by kBt becomes smaller than a random number, in that case we reject it. So effectively this scheme was given by Metropolis in 1953, that we consider a parameter, independent variable, which changes the potential energy. We consider a parameter and get a second estimate of the parameter as parameter I plus 1 equal to parameter I plus lambda into 0.5 minus random. So this part can either increase or decrease the parameter value. In this situation, we can calculate delta E. With this previous parameter, we have a energy EI, and with this next parameter or next independent variable, we calculate EI plus 1. We calculate this exponential minus delta E by kT, and then if we find this parameter is larger than a random number, in that case we can say that it has a sufficient probability to move from a lower energy to a higher energy state, and in that case we can take a sum of parameter or average value you want to estimate, and then we go to sum of the parameter or sum of the quantity to increase that, and then we go back again to vary the parameter to parameter I plus 2 from parameter I plus 1. So I plus 1 was accepted value, and then repeat this procedure. At some stage it may happen that EI plus 1 minus EI is such that exponential minus EI by kT is not really larger than a random number. So that means this test is false. In that case, we go to the previous situation. So we average the quantity with the previous value. That means the value which was earlier accepted. We can think in other way also. If we go back to this slide, so if we start from a position like this and we try to move upwards either in this direction or in this direction, this position is a energy minimum, and so obviously the system will not like to move away from this energy minimum. So in that case, if I try to move it up, the situation will not be accepted, or this will not be accepted. So that means this has some more contribution. If I try to move up in this direction, again it may not be accepted according to this criteria. We get some more contribution of this. But if I am somewhere here and if I try to move up, it is not accepted, I get it here, and next time I can get a random number which will allow me to move down. So in that case I will go to the better conformation. So these states will be a kind of transition state, whereas these states will be kind of stationary states where more contributions can come from these states and less contributions can come from these states. And obviously earlier lecture also showed that these will have lesser contribution in the average property, these energy barriers, energy hills, whereas these energy minimas, local energy minimas though, they will have more contribution in the average parameter. Now another thing you must consider, that all the transitions or all the transitions in realistic situation, in biological situation for example, are reversible. And so that means if it goes towards right, it has a probability, it should have equal probability to come to the left also. So this actually controls the lambda. The lambda thing can control this going right or left at equal probability, and so one has to make sure that the lambda value is chosen in such a way that there is always a more probability of getting a false. That means these energy differences will be such, or these parameter variation should be such that this test is not accepted 70% of the cases, or this test is only accepted for 30% of the cases. So using this we can calculate different parameters, different average property using canonical ensemble, using thermodynamics. So we can think of two situations. ith state, from ith state I can go to the violet state, which is very close by, or from ith state I can go to the red state, which is very far away. So energy difference between these two is quite small. So in this situation I expect the transition to be accepted, but it can happen that e to the power minus delta E by kt is such that it is smaller than a random number. It may happen, and that means it is not accepted. Why it is not accepted, although the energy difference is so small? That is because maybe at that time the particle had a very small kinetic energy somewhere here. So that means the probability will be less. So this expression gives me this probability, and so my value is smaller than a random number, indicates that probably I hit with or I was trying to move with a particle whose kinetic energy was very small. Similarly, I can try to move from ith state to the red state, I plus 1 state, and even though its energy difference is very high, but this situation, this thing can give me, this is very exponential minus delta E by kt will be very small at that time, but even then I can get it accepted because maybe that movement was tried by some atom which is having very high kinetic energy. So in many of the cases I will have kinetic energies close to the average energy, so those movements will be accepted, but many cases I may get kinetic energy very small. So in that case even small movements will not be accepted, or in some cases a large kinetic energy barrier also can be accepted because of having a very high kinetic energy. So this can be explained in this situation also, that if I have I to I plus 1, I can simulate at 300 Kelvin, that is room temperature. At 300 Kelvin, my KBT is 0.6 approximately. So in that case, if my delta E is, say for example 0.6, my KBT is 1, and so I will have exponential minus delta E by KBT is exponential minus 1, which is 0.37. So in that case, if I get a random number smaller than 0.37, my transition will be accepted. Getting a random number smaller than 0.37 is 0.37. So the probability of transition is 0.37. If I do the simulation at higher temperature, say 500 degree or 600 degree, in that case my KBT is 1. In that case my exponential minus delta E by KBT becomes exponential minus 0.6. So that is equal to 0.55. So then my probability of accepted transition is 0.55, because getting a random number smaller than 0.55 is again 0.55. So whatever was not accepted at 300 Kelvin became accepted. This kind of situation, that means at higher temperature, if I simulate, I will get more and more acceptance to cross the barrier. This is called simulated annealing. So we can use a Monte Carlo simulation at higher temperature to cross many more energy barriers, higher energy barriers, and to scan the situation, the ensemble or the phase space at much better accuracy. So if I come to realistic situation, we can apply Monte Carlo simulation to dock a ligand on a protein. The ligand can be a drug-like molecule. So what we can do is we can vary the x or y or z by this random number 0.5 minus random into lambda. We have to choose a appropriate lambda, or we can improve, modify and modify the lambda or over iterations. And then we calculate the potential energy in the previous situation and the new situation. We get a delta E value. Then we can calculate the Boltzmann factor, e to the power minus delta E by kVt. Compare the Boltzmann factor with random number and then accept or reject whether depending on the random number. And then repeat the procedure again to calculate the next iteration x, y, or x, y, z values of the ligand. And we have to also make sure that all the x, y, z of the ligands are moved together. So this will allow the ligand to move relative to the protein. So you have to keep the protein coordinates fixed. But just translational movement of the ligand with respect to the protein is not sufficient. We have to also rotate the molecule. Rotation of the molecule can be done by the Eulerian angle. In Eulerian angle, we can give 3 rotations. The first rotation will modify the x and y. The second rotation will then modify the x and z. And then third rotation we give about the modified z axis. And these 3 rotations will give rise in principle to all possible rotations, all possible rotational states of the ligand with respect to the protein. But there is a problem. Problem is that if we do not have a rotation or the rotation about the y-axis, if that is 0, in that case my first rotation will be about the z, and the last rotation, third rotation also will be about the same z. So that means we can actually do a rotation by a phi plus psi degree. So this is equivalent to a single rotation. That means although we wanted to have 3 rotations, but because of this theta being 0, we will end up with 1 rotation. So this does not give all possible rotations of the molecule of the ligand with respect to protein. So another approach was also undertaken, which is called quaternion. So quaternions can be used for a rotation. Quaternions, what are quaternions? Quaternions are some sort of complex number. So consider a complex number x plus iui, and we see that we can define the Cartesian coordinate in 2 dimensions by x, y. We can also define Cartesian coordinate by r theta, and we can also define Cartesian coordinate as x plus iui, where x is the abscissa and y is the ordinate. So if we have this x plus iui as a complex number, as the complex number describing the position of a particle, and then we can, if we want to rotate the particle by a phi amount, in that case my x prime y prime or r theta plus phi, this can be obtained by a multiplication like this. So we can obtain x prime y prime, x prime plus iui prime, another complex number, as x plus iui into cos phi plus I sin phi. You can calculate these and confirm yourself. So in this case, we have made use of a imaginary number I, which is equal to I square equal to minus 1, or we can say I equal to square root of minus 1. By analogy, in 3 dimension also, we can consider a quaternion Q, which is A plus IB plus JC plus KD. And in 3 dimension, we have another constraint, that is I into J is not equal to J into I, but equal to minus J into I, and that is equal to K. So this means these 3 conditions give us that these multiplication of the imaginary numbers in the quaternion are non-commutative in principle. So we can still follow this kind of principle in a different way to rotate in 3 dimension. So using these rotations by the quaternion principle, we can obtain different orientations of the molecule, and then we calculate their potential energies. Obviously, we are not changing the coordinates of the atoms such that the bond length or bond angle changes. So we can consider these to be constants. But when the protein and ligand orientations change, their van der Waals energy will be different, their electrostatic energy will be different, and we have to consider these two, and sometimes we consider the optional hydrogen bonding energy, and also we can consider the dehydration energy of each atom or group of ligand. Sometimes we consider the torsional flexibility, so in that case we vary the torsion angles of the ligands, and I told you the hydrogen bonding energy also can be considered in this equation to calculate the total energy, total interaction energy between the protein and the ligand. So in this lecture we have learnt Monte Carlo simulation technique, where we randomly perturb some parameter of the describing the molecular conformation, and then obtain a new structure. Then we compare their energies, their potential energies, then calculate the Boltzmann factor according to temperature of our desired temperature, and then we accept or reject the structure, the new structure, depending on the Boltzmann factor and the random number available at that moment. So this method can scan the whole phase space, and they can overcome also local energy barriers between two local energy minima. So if we can simulate at high temperature, then we can overcome big energy hills, and if we simulate at lower temperature, we can bypass smaller hills. And so given sufficient number of iterations, we can scan the whole phase space to obtain the structures. But this method is limited when we can have only small number of variables. So if we have huge number of variables, such as in a protein and solvation where we have 100,000 atoms, so each of these atoms have 3 degrees of freedom. So in those cases, Monte Carlo Metropolis method is not the choice of ultimate choice. We will be discussing about those methods in the next lectures. Thank you very much.